What up, everybody? This is a Verse Late Night coming to you live at 11:30 on the East Coast. We'll be doing some NBA draft recaps, talking about some of the atrocious picks we saw this week's draft. I mean, seriously, what is up with all these French players going top 10? Nobody even knew, the top two players. No Atlanta Hawk fans happy. No Hornet fan I know as a Hornet fan is happy. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about why are there so many French players, um, and then on top of that we've got hot takes. But starting, with the Thunder low key guys are not that good at drafting. I mean, yeah, they hit on Chet, but they traded for SGA. They drafted Giddy, sold him for a role player. Drafted Jalen Williams, you know, the bad one, not the good one. Um, and Usman Jang, hasn't played a friggin' minute. Kason Wallace, guard out of Kentucky, those guys always slap. And for some reason, he, just got, basically buried on the depth chart when Nikola Topic, the 12th overall pick this year, comes into the play. So it's really confusing why the Thunder get all this credit for being, the best GM in the league, stockpiling all these picks, but they literally don't hit on him. I mean, Chet Holmgren is obviously a hit, but if you set him aside and you look at their last couple drafts, I mean, Jalen Williams a hit, Holmgren a hit, everyone else a bust. Now, obviously, it's too early to call him a bust, but you got to think about, Sam Presti. Oh my God, he's a genius. He's the best NBA GM, but just getting picks is enough. You actually have to draft, more Kevin Durant's. You got to draft some SGAs with all these stabs. And I mean, they traded 5 second round picks for the 26th overall pick in the draft yesterday to take a guy out of Weber State. Now, I'm not hating on Weber State. Obviously, Damian Lillard went there. Um, but you got to question first overall seed spending their lottery pick on a position that they spent last year's lottery pick on. And the guy is going to miss most of the season, with a torn ACL. So So, guys, outside of the Thunder, I could probably shit on them all night. But another team I didn't like was the Spurs. The Spurs, I don't think they got better at all. Taking Stephon Castle at 4, you know, Castle's a well accomplished, player in college with 2 championships with UConn, lockdown defender. But he is not, the Wimby star. He is not going to be a core reason why this team, gets out of being the 13th seed in the West. So didn't love that. And then trading Rob Dillingham for, a 2030 pick and a 2031 pick swap. I mean, you're literally trading for high schoolers. You got Wimby on the team right now. What are you waiting for? So I thought the Spurs were really a suspect team in the draft. I think if they had kept Dillingham, then would have been a different story, honestly. But uh, having Dillingham go to Minnesota, improve another team in the West, I mean, Spurs just did not get better from that trade. So um, Spurs Thunder, I think major losers, and then guys, the Hornets. The Hornets are my team. Unfortunately, I am a Hornet fan, and it's tough. It's tough life being a Hornet fan, guys, because we just took John Soulon, 6th overall. Mock drafts don't mean anything, but he was mocked, 10 through 15. And we got Klingon still on the board. We had, Dalton Connect. We had Mataz Bazelis. I mean, some talents that were a little bit more surefire. Maybe not as much of an upside, but more surefire than whatever to Jay Saloon. And look, he's got potential, but you can't just compare every lanky, raw foreigner to Giannis. So for every Giannis, there's a Jan Vesely. So if you get that, if you understand that reference, you're a real ball fan. A couple other points I want to point out. Reed Shepard is a dog. I mean, this guy shot like 50% from three, 2.5 steals a game in college, coming off the bench. How do you get 2.5 steals a game off the bench? I mean, this guy literally, I see why so many teams, including the Hornets, wanted to trade up and pick him. But he's a loser of this draft because he's going to go play in Houston. He's going to be with Shot Chucker Green, Fred Van Vliet, who everyone loves, Asar Thompson, who we'll see, plays a similar position. And, you know, the Rockets just have all these young players. They should have traded this pick. Or they should be trading Jalen Green right now. I mean, don't be surprised if you see Jalen Green get shipped out of here come, before the beginning of the season. Because I really think Jalen Green doesn't have a place on this Rockets team. I mean, he had a good year in spurts, but volume shooters are not popular in today's NBA. A couple other points. Look, Bronny going 55. Reports that Rich Paul was threatening teams. Some reports said ordering teams not to pick him. It's pretty hard to believe, but when you're a guy like Rich Paul, you got that clout. So I guess perhaps they put that in the media. Teams know this is a destiny for Bronny to play with his dad. So I think Bronny will actually develop into a rotation player in his career. I mean, he's obviously got the genes for it. He's gonna be able to play under his dad, play with Anthony Davis. I mean, he's probably gonna spend some time in the G League, but even him sitting on the bench is primetime TV. So, that first lob from Bronny to LeBron or vice versa, the first lob slam is going to be insane. I mean, that highlight will be one of LeBron's favorite achievements, playing with his son. He might like that better than, one of his titles. So definitely not 2016, but you get my point. I think Bronny's going to play for the Lakers for a long time. I think his upside is absolute upside. Now, don't get me wrong here. I think his absolute upside is Drew Holiday. And I say that because he's got the physical tools. He has the motor. In his 5 minutes a game in college, he played good defense. So Bronny, I think, is a winner of this draft. I think LeBron's a winner of this draft. And I think that, LeBron and Bronny are, even if people don't want to like it, they're going to love it. It's just, I'm just telling you, they're going to love it. So, other points, Jared McCain, he's doing too much. I mean, imagine getting drafted nearly in the lottery in the NBA and having your first question be about your TikTok followers. I know he didn't write that question, but Jared McCain, like, we get it. You paint your nails, bro. We get it. I really don't care. But Philly's going to care. And Philly's going to care a lot if you're not cashing 40% of your threes at least. So I do like the fit in Philly. I think he has the potential to be a great fit. I mean, that team has 4 players on the roster right now. So I think he's got a chance to be a great fit. I like their other pick with Adem Bona out of UCLA. But I have to think that Jared McCain needs to tone down his talk when he gets into the NBA, and if he gets minutes this season, which I'm almost certain he will, he's gonna have a tough crowd. So he needs to chill a bit. Donovan Clingan, I think he's the best player, potentially, has the potential to be the best player in the draft, and I mean that because of his floor is so high. I think his ability to play defense, massive frame, tons of experience in college. People aren't giving him credit, but Al Horford came out of the draft you know, back-to-back championships with Florida. That is exactly the position that Klingen's coming from, just with UConn. And the UConn team's probably, when it's all said and done, a better team than that Florida team. So I think Klingen has the potential to be the best player in the draft. And even if he's not the best player, he might be the best pick. And I mean, like, you know, if one of the guys in the teens turns into a absolute star, Giannis level star, yeah, that's gonna be a better pick. But Donovan Klingen fallen to 7. The Portland gotten exactly what they want. Probably gonna trade DeAndre Ayton. I mean, I was shocked that the Hornets didn't trade back when Klingen was still available. So I think he could be the best player in the draft. I think he's the safest pick in the draft for sure. Um, and a couple other points. The Hawks. Look, I have them as a loser here because really, when it comes down to it, there was just not a top player in this draft. There was not a clear cut one. There was not somebody that every team was thirsting to have. I mean, when Paolo went first, at least there were consensus, that the top 3 and could kind of go in any order, and people thought Jabari Smith, but no, I mean, literally the consensus around Versace came the last 10 days, 2 weeks or so. And he might end up being a really good player. He's got the physical tools, but the Hawks should have traded either Trae Young or DeJounte Murray before this pick came around, or they should have traded the pick. Because now, how do you retool around Young, Murray, Versace? And honestly, I think the only thing that makes them not the biggest loser of the night is they picked up Nikola Jurisic out of Serbia in the second round. And I would really say, everyone, keep your eye on Jurisic. He has the potential to be, I think, a really high-level scorer in the league. I would almost all-star potential on Jurisic. He did not get the looks that a lot of the foreign players this season did, but I was really impressed that the Hawks got him in the second round. The Blazers, I'd say they're a winner. They picked up Klingen at 7, Deni Avdija, in exchange for the 14th pick and a future pick. And I really think that Portland, just getting Klingen alone, puts them in the winner category. And guys, the Knicks. Let's talk about the Nova Knicks. So, I don't know about you guys. I live in New York, and having the Knicks be good was just like a religious experience for the city. So, really shocked me that they did what so many of us have done in 2K and, traded for Bridges and reunited the team. But let's not forget that Villanova team, were champions. Mikal Bridges, 10th overall pick, taken by Philly, traded on draft night to Phoenix. People remember the story about his mom, who works for the Philly organization. It was a really wholesome story. Ending up in New York, across the street, from Brooklyn. I think that this Knicks team, after re-signing OG and probably re-signing Hartenstein, I think that this team is built to stop the Celtics. Just full stop. They are built to stop the Celtics. The Celtics obviously are an amazing team. They've got great defense, but they got great offense. But really the key to them is, Jalen and Jason. And you can tell that this Knicks team is built with Bridges and OG to guard those players. Josh Hart's a solid defender at times. We'll see what happens with Julius Randle. I think he'll be back on the team because they're coming up on the second apron. It's going to be difficult for them to make a trade. So I really would say the Knicks are a winner here. And they also picked up a player I like in the second round, Tyler Kolek. Probably will see real minutes this season for New York, given that their depth is going to take a hit. Um, won't be able to sign any major role players unless they take the minimum. So I would say the Knicks picked up a good player with Kolek. Ugh. Versus late night boys. We out here. I want to talk a little bit more about Reed Shepard being a loser. Look, this guy is, up there with Klingon as, one of the highest potentials. He doesn't have as high of a floor due to his size. I mean, it's rare we see players with as good of shooting and on ball defense at his size, but that size still could hamstring him. I still think that he could struggle in the NBA and he could struggle to get meaningful minutes because the Rockets have a ton of bad defenders and they've got a ton of players really just make a trade. Um, I think that Shepard will struggle, honestly, to carve out a star role. But at the same time, I think that his talent is undeniable. So we'll see how it turns out for him. I think it'll take a couple years. And maybe it's in Houston. Maybe he's a centerpiece. Maybe in Summer League he really impresses. And maybe in the Kevin Durant trade, they're getting Reed Shepard, as part of a deal with Houston. But all this talk about Alperen Sengun getting traded for Durant, if you're the Rockets and you trade a potential MVP, Sengun, that would be unbelievably stupid. Just unbelievably stupid. And I think there are only a couple players in the league that have Jokic potential, and he is one of them. So I could shit on Kevin Durant all day because he's a loser. I mean, literally, he's a loser. He doesn't win. The only wins he has are joining a 72, 73 win team, having the easiest championships of all time. Like, how does any real ball fan have respect for what Kevin Durant has done in his career? Him in Oklahoma City could have been amazing. They could have been perfect. But for him to be potentially asking out of Phoenix, I mean, Stephen A. Smith seems convinced that they went out. And look, I wouldn't blame the Suns for doing what the Nets did, pulling the trigger, but then they're stuck with the Bradley Beal contract. But look, maybe Bradley Beal would take a deal. He's got a no trade clause. Maybe he'd take a deal. Kind of pick where he wants to go. I don't know if it's possible, but I think a Paul George sign-in trade for Bradley Beal actually works for both teams. And it works better, actually, if they trade, Durant, because Durant, Paul George, Devin Booker, it's too many guys who play the same position, honestly. And they already have that problem with Beal. So the Suns are an absolute dumpster fire. I did like what they did in the draft this last night. They picked up Ryan Dunn, who's a good defender, on ball defender. They need that. They picked up some prospects in the second round at center, but when you feel like losing Drew Eubanks and Eric Gordon at 35 years old, if you lose those players and feel like your team can't recover, that means you have a really fucking bad team. Like really bad. So Durant is just finding new ways to impress everybody with losing, and hard to have much respect for what he's done. So I'll get back to my point about the Thunder earlier. Guys, the Thunder are widely regarded as one of the smartest, most crafty traders. They've got Sam Presti, who runs the show and has made some really amazing trades in his life. But you know what he also didn't do? He didn't keep James Harden. And that unraveled, potentially what would have been the best team of all time. And I think he gets a lot of credit for trading for Paul George and, you know, making the Chris Paul trade where they got all the Rockets picks and then Chris Paul led them to the playoffs. Look, I get it. The Thunder aren't a bad team. They never are. And it's great. It's respectable. But they've drafted a lot of players that I'm really questionable about. Like Josh Giddey, P. Giddy, as they call him. You know, he comes in and after a couple years looks like a really interesting prospect. A guy who fills up the stat sheet, can score, can pass, can rebound, can play defense. But, for them to give up on him now, I get it. They got Shea with the ball in his hands, and they got a good piece in Caruso. But that's a sixth overall pick, that they traded for a G League player that averages 10 points. And obviously Caruso is not a G League player, but I'm saying he came into the league as a G League player. Giddey came in as a sixth overall pick, and he's 21 years old. And what really bothers me is taking Nikola Topic at 12. When you're in a win now team, you're supposed to be a win now team. At least you were the number one seed in the Western Conference. And so you're in the Western Conference, the number one seed, and you take Kason Wallace last year out of Kentucky. High potential guard, two-way guy. And then, you got, at that time they had Trey Mann, who they had put some draft capital in. They draft Kason Wallace, and they have Giddey, okay? They trade Giddey for a guard who's going to play the same role as Giddey, just better. And then you draft a Nikola Topic, who I think could be an amazing player. Really, I think he's shown more than almost anyone in this draft. I'm a huge fan of his. But you draft him 12th overall, he's not even going to, reports are he's not going to play next season, which I think is bogus. It's June right now. The Thunder want to be playing in next June. So I think that, Topic will play. But play over who? You got Kason Wallace, who got somewhat meaningful minutes this season. You got Isaiah Joe. You got a couple, Aaron Wiggins. You got other guards that are going to take some of the two guard spot. And, Shea's kind of a two. But Topic is like a guy that is going to run an offense. Topic is a guy that's going to, lead your team. Not necessarily in scoring, but he's going to, fundamentally as a passer and as a ball handler. So I just don't like it. And then, you add in Ousmane Dieng, a French player that they selected 2 years ago. They took him, like 8th overall? And again, just like you can't say Saloon or any of these, lanky big Euros, you can't just call him Giannis. It's a lazy comparison. But Ousmane Dieng barely played. He's barely played in his whole career. And, there's players that don't play in their early career that turn out good, but there's also Sekou Doumbouya's, There's also Killian Hayes, who, plays and then falls out of the league. So I don't like the Dieng pick. I don't like, the Kason Wallace or the Topic pick. And then Jalen Williams, obviously one of the Jalen Williams on the team is an amazing player, absolute tremendous draft pick, but the other one is really coming on slow. I know some people are big fans of his, but he's really come on slow, and he hasn't shown, first round talent. So I don't know. I think Sam Presti deserves a little bit of a reviewed resume. I also think you got to say, that the Spurs were a huge loser in this draft. Trading the 8th overall pick for a high schooler and a pick swap for a high schooler, that's not impressive to me. And Rob Dillingham really fit that team. He fit their timeline. He fit their needs. He was pleading with the Spurs in pre-draft process to actually pick him. He was very vocal about that. And for him to absolutely get no no love from the Spurs, get traded to Minnesota. He might be happy because Minnesota's a great team with a lot of potential, but I don't know. I was really surprised by the Spurs, and Stephen Castle is obviously a good basketball player. I don't know how he'll translate. I think he's got a little bit of a Davion Mitchell vibe, where he's a lockdown defender, but he struggles on offense, and then he comes in the league and he doesn't lock down shit, and he struggles on offense. Um, Other points just to highlight, guys. The Utah Jazz. If you're paying attention to Kyle Filipowski, check out our TikTok. We've got an interesting TikTok post up showing a little bit about the background on his controversy going right now. And for him to get picked to Utah, I mean, it's literally like a South Park episode what's going on right now. So feel bad for him. I feel bad for any player that gets drafted to Utah, but I think they had a good draft. I mean, taking Cody Williams at 10, getting Isaiah Collier at 27, and then Filipowski at 32. I mean, those are three guys who at times were projected top 5 picks. Maybe not Filipowski, but top 10 picks, and they got them all at past pick 9. So I don't know exactly how they're thinking roster construction wise, but I do think the Utah Jazz had a good draft. Deserve some credit for that. And also, I think it's worth pointing out that Baylor Shireman going to Boston is a pretty interesting fit. Classic white guy shooter. So Boston, of course, is all over him. He's got good size, and they can afford to have him shooting, in the G League all season long and call him up when they need. So I liked that pick. I think the Tijon Saloon pick from the Hornets was as risky as it gets for a new GM to come in and talk about, risk, talk about big balls. Like Tijon Saloon coming in and at the 6th overall pick with a brand new coach, a brand new GM. You know who apparently was the biggest fan of this pick? Steve Clifford, former head coach who um, just moved into a front office role. I don't know why he's in a front office role, but I guess it's good to have continuity. But I think that pick is a disaster waiting to happen because Charlotte just cannot afford another bust. James Bouknight bust, Kai Jones bust. But the one thing that gives you hope is Brandon Miller was absolutely a hated pick. Brandon Miller, people thought was going to be an absolute disaster. They thought Scoot Henderson was the pick, and turns out, Brandon Miller is a stud. So, if the Hornets fans hate the pick, part of me thinks that means it's a good one. So we'll see how Saloon does. He's not going to play a whole lot, I think. But Miles Bridges, they got to look to re-sign him. So we'll see if he returns to the team. If they lose him for nothing, then they're in a really dark spot as a franchise. The Hornets got to figure that out. What else? Guys, the Celtics are really as strong as it gets to be a repeat candidate. I'm just not sure who else in the league is going to really test them outside of Denver. We'll see if Dallas can get better. We'll see if Minnesota can get better. But I think we're right now early odds-on favorite should be Denver versus Boston in next year's finals, and Denver is about to lose KCP, it potentially looks like. So if they do lose a valuable two-way guy like that, good luck, right? Like, good luck. So that's about does it for the draft recap, guys. We'll be doing a lot more of these late-night streams, and you'll see a lot of my colleagues on here doing more streams as well. So if you like this format, trying out something new, if you hate it, let us know in the chat. We can always go back to our normal phone streams, but wanted to try this out. So appreciate you guys joining us.